Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, watching the stars slowly drift past the main viewport. The ship had been traveling for 3 weeks now, toward the Kepler 442 system, and Jake was ready to stretch his legs on solid ground again. His crew of 25 explorers had been handpicked for this mission to survey new worlds that might hold valuable resources or even signs of life. The bridge hummed quietly with the sound of computers and life support systems. Jake's second in command, Lieutenant Ben Carter, approached him with a datapad in his hands. Ben was a good officer who had served with Jake for 5 years on different exploration missions. He never panicked and always got the job done. "Captain, we're about to drop out of faster-than-light travel in 30 minutes, Ben reported. "All systems are running normally, and the crew is ready for planetary surveys." Jake nodded and looked at the tactical display showing their destination. The Kepler 442 system had one planet in the habitable zone that showed promising signs of water and atmosphere. Earth's government had sent them to investigate if the planet could support human colonies in the future. "Good work, Ben. Have Dr. Lisa Kane report to the bridge in 15 minutes. I want her to start scanning for any unusual readings as soon as we arrive." Dr. Lisa Kane was the ship's xenobiologist and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. She had spent years studying alien life forms and had written several papers on the possibility of finding intelligent life in the galaxy. If anyone could spot something interesting on the planet below, it would be her. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the viewport, Jake could see the orange glow of the system's star and the blue-green planet they had come to explore. It looked beautiful and peaceful from space, but Jake knew that looks could be deceiving. Dr. Kane arrived on the bridge, carrying her portable scanner and wearing her usual serious expression. She was in her early 30s, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to notice everything. Jake had learned to trust her instincts completely over the years they had worked together. "Captain, I'm already picking up some strange energy readings from the planet's northern continent," she said while studying her scanner. "The signatures don't match anything in our databases. They appear to be artificial in origin." Jake felt his pulse quicken. Artificial energy signatures could mean only one thing. Someone or something had built technology on this planet. After decades of searching the galaxy, humans had never found clear proof of intelligent alien life. This could be the discovery that changed everything. "Can you determine the source of these readings?" Jake asked. "Not from this distance. We'll need to get closer and possibly send a landing party to investigate." "The readings are concentrated in a crystalline formation about 50 kilometers from the planet's north pole." Jake made his decision quickly. "Ben prepares Shuttle Bay 1 for a landing party. I want you, Dr. Kane, medic, Danny Roberts, and engineer Amy Foster, ready to go in 1 hour. We're going to take a look at these energy readings." The shuttle Pathfinder launched from the horizon's edge an hour later with Jake at the controls. The small craft could carry 8 people and had enough supplies for a 3-day mission on the planet's surface. As they entered the atmosphere, Jake could see vast forests and mountain ranges spreading out below them. The northern continent was mostly covered in ice and snow, but the area where the energy readings originated was different. Strange crystal formations jutted up from the ground like frozen lightning bolts. Some were as tall as skyscrapers, and they all seemed to pulse with a faint blue light. "The readings are getting stronger," Dr. Kane announced from her seat behind Jake. "Whatever is generating this energy is directly ahead of us." Jake piloted the shuttle between the crystal formations until he found a flat area where they could land safely. The team gathered their equipment and stepped out onto the planet's surface. The air was thin but breathable, and the temperature was cold but not dangerous. With their protective suits, Amy Foster was a skilled engineer who had worked on dozens of different alien technologies. She carried a toolkit that could analyze and repair almost any kind of machinery. Danny Roberts was the team's medic and had trained in xenobiology to help treat Injuries from unknown alien sources. They walked carefully through the crystal forest, following Dr. Kane's scanner toward the strongest energy readings. The crystals seemed to respond to their presence by glowing brighter as they passed. Jake wondered if this was some kind of natural phenomenon, or if the crystals were actually a form of technology. After walking for 30 minutes, they reached a clearing where the energy readings were strongest. In the center of the clearing was something that made Jake's heart race. It was clearly a spacecraft, but unlike anything humans had ever built. The hull was made of the same crystalline material as the formations around them, and it appeared to be partially buried in the ground. "My God," Dr. Kane whispered. "It's definitely artificial. The energy readings are coming from inside the ship." The spacecraft was about the size of a small building and shaped like a teardrop. Part of it had been damaged, and Jake could see twisted metal and broken crystal panels. It looked like it had crashed here recently, because there was no sign of weathering or age. Amy, set up a perimeter and start scanning for any dangers. "Dr. Kane, you're with me. We're going to take a look inside." Jake and Dr. Kane approached the damaged section of the ship carefully. There was a hole in the hull large enough for them to climb through. Jake drew his sidearm and activated his flashlight before stepping. Inside, the interior was dark, except for a few dim lights that pulsed with the same blue glow as the crystals outside. The ship's interior was beautiful, despite the damage. The walls were smooth and curved with patterns that seemed to flow like water. Everything was sized for beings roughly the same height as humans, but the proportions were slightly different. Jake noticed that the doorways were taller and narrower than what humans would build. They moved deeper into the ship, following a corridor that led toward what appeared to be the main living area. Dr. Kane's scanner was beeping rapidly now, indicating they were getting close to the energy source. Jake could hear a faint sound coming from ahead of them that almost sounded like breathing. They rounded a corner, and Jake stopped so suddenly that Dr. Kane nearly ran into him. Lying on the floor, in what looked like a sleeping alcove, was a being that was clearly not human. She appeared to be unconscious and badly injured, but she was definitely alive. The alien was humanoid, but her skin was translucent and blue, with silver markings that seemed to shift and change. Her hair was long and white and moved as if it were floating in water. She wore clothing made of the same crystalline material as the ship, but it was torn and stained with what looked like blood. Jake approached her slowly with his hands visible and his weapon lowered. As he got closer, her eyes suddenly opened, and Jake found himself staring into the most beautiful violet eyes he had ever seen. They were filled with pain and fear, but also with intelligence and desperate hope. The alien tried to sit up but gasped in pain and fell back down. She looked at Jake, and then at Dr. Kane, who was scanning her with medical equipment. Then she did something that surprised Jake completely. She reached out and grabbed the front of his shirt with both hands gripping the fabric tightly. She spoke in a language that Jake didn't understand, but her meaning was clear. Her voice was melodic, even though it was weak and filled with pain. She was begging him not to leave her alone. Jake looked into her eyes and made a promise he intended to keep. "Don't worry," he said softly. "We're going to help you. We're not going anywhere." Jake knelt beside the injured alien, keeping his movements slow and careful. Her grip on his shirt was surprisingly strong, despite her obvious weakness. He could feel her trembling and see the pain in her violet eyes. Dr. Kane moved around too, the other side of the alien, and began running her medical scanner over the strange blue skin. "Jake, her vital signs are weak but stable," Dr. Kane said quietly. "She's definitely suffering from some kind of radiation poisoning. The readings I'm getting suggest her ship's power core is damaged and leaking dangerous energy." The alien's breathing was shallow and rapid. Jake could see that her translucent skin had dark patches that looked like bruises but seemed to glow faintly from within. The silver markings on her face and arms were pulsing slowly, like a heartbeat. "Can we move her safely?" Jake asked, while trying to keep his voice calm and reassuring for the alien's benefit. "We need to stabilize her first. Danny, get over here with the medical kit. Amy, I need you to scan the ship's power systems and see if we can shut down whatever is causing this radiation leak." Danny Roberts hurried over with his medical supplies, while Amy Foster began examining the ship's damaged systems. The alien watched them all with wide eyes that seemed to take in everything. She was clearly intelligent and trying to understand what they were doing. Jake noticed that whenever he started to pull away from her, she would grip his shirt tighter and make soft sounds of distress. He realized that his presence was somehow comforting to her, so he stayed close while Dr. Kane and Danny worked to treat her injuries. "I'm going to give her something for the pain," Danny said, while preparing a small injector. "The scanner shows that her nervous system is similar enough to ours that human painkillers should work." The alien flinched when Danny approached with the injector, but Jake spoke to her in a soothing voice. "It's okay. He's trying to help you feel better." Even though she couldn't understand his words, she seemed to recognize his tone and allowed Danny to treat her. Within minutes, the painkiller began to take effect. The alien's breathing became deeper and more regular. Her grip on Jake's shirt loosened slightly, but she didn't let go. She looked at him with an expression that seemed grateful and curious at the same time. Amy Foster called out from across the room where she was examining a large crystal formation that appeared to be the ship's power source. "Captain, I found the problem. The power core is cracked, and radiation is leaking into the ship's atmosphere. I can't fix it, but I might be able to contain the leak temporarily." "Do it," Jake ordered. "We need to get her out of here before the radiation exposure gets worse." As Amy worked on the power core, the alien became more alert. She looked around the room and then back at Jake with an expression of growing urgency. She tried to speak, but her voice was too weak to hear clearly. Jake leaned closer, and she whispered something in her musical language while pointing toward the back of the ship. "She wants us to go that way," Jake told Dr. Kane. "She's trying to tell us something important." Dr. Kane shook her head. "Jake, she's been exposed to dangerous levels of radiation. She might be hallucinating or confused. We need to get her to our ship's medical bay immediately." But the alien became more agitated when she heard Dr. Kane's words. Even though she couldn't understand English, she seemed to sense that they were planning to leave without investigating what she was trying to show them. She gripped Jake's shirt with both hands again and spoke more urgently. Jake looked into her eyes and saw something that made him change his mind. Despite her injuries and weakness, there was a clarity in her gaze that convinced him she was thinking clearly. Whatever she wanted him to find was important enough that she was willing to risk her life to communicate it. "Danny, stay with her and keep monitoring her condition. Dr. Kane, you're with me. We're going to take a quick look at what she's trying to show us." They followed the alien's pointing finger toward the back of the ship. The corridor was darker here, and some of the walls showed significant damage from the crash. Jake's flashlight revealed several rooms that appeared to be storage areas, and what might have been crew quarters. At the end of the corridor they found a room that was different from the others. It was smaller, and the walls were covered with complex patterns that seemed to move and shift in the light. In the center of the room was a pedestal holding what looked like a crystal sphere about the size of a human head. "The energy readings are off the charts," Dr. Kane said while scanning this sphere. "This thing is generating massive amounts of data. I think it might be some kind of computer or information storage device." Jake approached the pedestal carefully. The crystal sphere was beautiful and seemed to contain swirling patterns of light that moved like clouds in a storm. He had the feeling that whatever information it contained was incredibly important. "Can we remove it safely?" he asked. Dr. Kane studied her scanner readings for a moment. "I think so. The energy it's generating doesn't appear to be harmful. It's different from the radiation coming from the power core." Jake reached out and carefully lifted the crystal sphere from its pedestal. It was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own inner light. As soon as he picked it up, he heard a sound from the corridor behind them. The alien was calling out weakly. They hurried back to find that the alien had tried to sit up when she saw them returning. When she saw the crystal sphere in Jake's hands, her face showed an expression of pure relief. She reached out toward it with trembling fingers and spoke a single word that sounded like a name. "I think this belongs to her people," Jake said. It might be the only thing she managed to save from her ship. Amy Foster had finished her work on the power core, and the radiation levels in the ship were dropping rapidly. "Captain, I've contained the leak, but it's only temporary. We need to evacuate now before the containment fails." Jake made the decision quickly. "Danny, prepare her for transport. We're taking her back to our ship along with this crystal device. Amy, grab any other technology. That looks important, but do it fast." Danny and Dr. Kane worked together to move the alien onto a portable stretcher. She kept her grip on Jake's shirt throughout the process and watched his face constantly, as if afraid he might disappear. Jake stayed close and continued speaking to her in reassuring tones. "We're going to take you somewhere safe," he told her. "Our ship has a medical bay where we can help you recover. You're not alone anymore." The alien seemed to understand his meaning, if not his words. She relaxed slightly and allowed them to secure her to the stretcher. As they carried her out of the damaged ship, Jake noticed that she was still watching him with those remarkable violet eyes. The journey back to their shuttle was slow and careful. The alien's condition remained stable, but Dr. Kane was concerned about moving her too quickly. Jake walked beside the stretcher, holding the crystal sphere and trying to project calm confidence. Once they reached the shuttle, Jake helped secure the alien in the medical bay while Dr. Kane began more detailed scans of her injuries. The alien's grip on his shirt never loosened completely, and Jake found himself reluctant to leave her side. "The radiation poisoning is serious but treatable," Dr. Kane reported. "Her species seems to have a natural resistance to radiation that probably saved her life. With proper medical care, she should make a full recovery." As the shuttle lifted off from the planet's surface, Jake looked down at the crystal formations one last time. Somewhere in that alien ship was technology that could change human understanding of the galaxy. But right now, all he cared about was the injured being who had grabbed his shirt and asked him not to leave her. The alien had fallen asleep during the flight back to the horizon's edge, but her hand was still tangled in Jake's shirt. He sat quietly beside her stretcher and wondered what her story was. How had she ended up crashed on that planet? Where had she come from, and why was the crystal sphere so important to her? As the shuttle docked with the main ship, Jake realized that finding this alien was going to change everything. Not just for him and his crew, but possibly for all of humanity. They had finally found proof that intelligent life existed beyond Earth, and she was holding on to his shirt like her life depended on it. Jake looked down at the sleeping alien and made another promise. He would make sure she was safe, and he would help her find her way home. Whatever it took, he would not abandon her the way someone had obviously abandoned her on that lonely planet. The medical bay doors opened and Dr. Kane began preparing to transfer their patient to the ship's main medical facility. The alien stirred and opened her eyes, looking confused and frightened until she saw Jake's face. Then she smiled, and Jake felt his heart skip a beat. He was already in more trouble than he realized. 3 days had passed since they brought the alien aboard the horizon's edge. Jake had barely left the medical bay except to handle the most urgent ship business. The alien was recovering well from her radiation poisoning, but she still seemed most comfortable when Jake was nearby. Dr. Kane had run every test she could think of to understand the alien's physiology. The results were fascinating. Her species was remarkably similar to humans in many ways, but there were important differences. Her bones were lighter and stronger, her blood carried oxygen more efficiently, and her brain showed activity patterns that suggested enhanced mental abilities. "She's definitely intelligent," Dr. Kane explained to Jake as they stood beside the medical bed. Her brain scans show complex thought patterns, and she's been trying to communicate with us constantly. I think she understands more of what we're saying than we realize. The alien was awake and watching them with those striking violet eyes. Jake had taken to calling her Nova because her silver markings reminded him of stars. She seemed to approve of the name and would smile when he used it. Jake's communication officer, Lieutenant Chris Parker, had been working around the clock with the ship's computer to analyze the crystal sphere they had found. The device was clearly some kind of advanced data storage system, but breaking the encryption was proving difficult. "Captain, we're making progress with the alien database," Chris reported over the intercom. "The computer has identified several thousand unique symbols and is starting to recognize patterns. We should be able to attempt basic communication within a few hours." Nova's head turned toward the intercom speaker when she heard Chris's voice. She looked at Jake and spoke in her musical language, while pointing at the crystal sphere, which was secured in a nearby storage unit. "She wants us to use the crystal to talk to her," Jake said. "I think it might contain a translation program or language database." Dr. Kane nodded thoughtfully. "That would make sense. If her people travel between different worlds, they would need a way to communicate with other species. The crystal might be some kind of universal translator." Jake made a decision that he hoped he wouldn't regret. "Chris, bring the crystal sphere to the medical bay. We're going to try to establish communication with our guest." 20 minutes later, Chris Parker arrived with the crystal sphere and a portable interface unit. Chris was a young officer who had graduated top of his class from the Communications Academy. If anyone could figure out how to use alien technology, it would be him. Nova became very excited when she saw the crystal sphere. She tried to sit up in bed, but was still too weak from her injuries. Jake helped her lean forward while Chris set up the interface equipment. "The crystal is responding to her presence," Chris reported. "The energy patterns are changing, and the internal structure is becoming more organized. I think it's activating." The crystal sphere began to glow brighter, and the patterns inside it moved faster. Nova spoke to it in her own language, and the crystal pulsed in response. Then something amazing happened. The crystal projected a holographic interface that floated in the air above the medical bed. Nova touched the holographic controls with her fingertips, and the interface changed. Symbols appeared and disappeared while she worked with obvious familiarity. Jake watched in fascination as she programmed the device to do something specific. Finally, Nova looked at Jake and spoke a single word. The crystal pulsed and a mechanical voice said hello in perfect English. "My God," Dr. Kane whispered. "It worked. The crystal is translating her words into our language." Nova smiled and spoke again. This time the crystal translated her words into a full sentence. "I am grateful for your kindness. You saved my life when you could have left me to die." Jake felt a thrill of excitement. After days of wondering what she was thinking, he could finally hear her thoughts. "What is your name?" he asked. Nova listened to the crystal translate his words into her language, then responded. "My name is Zara. I am a princess of the Ethereal Collective. My people come from a world called Luminara, in a distant star system." "A princess," Jake repeated. "That explains why the crystal sphere was so important to her. It probably contains vital information about her people." Zara nodded when she heard the translation. "The crystal contains the history and knowledge of my people. It also holds information about the enemy that destroyed my homeworld. I was fleeing from them when my ship was damaged, and I crashed on your planet." Dr. Kane leaned forward with interest. "What kind of enemy? Are they still a threat?" Zara's expression became sad and frightened. "They are called the Shadowborn. They are a race of beings that devour entire civilizations. They attacked Luminara without warning and destroyed everything I had ever known. I am one of the few survivors." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How many of your people escaped?" "Perhaps a few thousand out of billions," Zara replied. "The Shadowborn came in massive ships and turned our cities to ash. They take everything useful and leave only death behind. I was sent away with this crystal to preserve our knowledge and to warn other worlds. The medical bay fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Jake had been hoping that contact with an alien species would be peaceful and beneficial. Instead, they had found a refugee fleeing from a genocidal enemy. Where are these Shadowborn now? Jake asked. Zara closed her eyes and spoke quietly. They are coming toward this sector of the galaxy. They obtained our star charts during the invasion, and now they know the location of many worlds, including Earth. I estimate they will arrive in your system within 2 years. Jake felt his blood turn cold. An enemy capable of destroying an entire civilization was heading toward Earth, and humanity had no idea they were coming. What can we do to stop them? The crystal contains detailed information about Shadowborn technology and tactics, Zara explained. My people fought them for months before our defenses were overcome. There are weaknesses in their ships that can be exploited, but it requires precise coordination and advanced weapons. Dr. Kane spoke up. Could you help us prepare our defenses? Would you be willing to share this information with Earth's military? Zara looked directly at Jake when she answered. I will help you, because you helped me. When you found me injured and alone, you could have left me to die. Instead, you risked your lives to save mine. I owe you a debt that can never be repaid. Jake felt uncomfortable with the idea of Zara owing him anything. You don't owe us anything. Helping someone in need is what decent people do. We would want someone to help us if we were in your situation. That is exactly why I will help you, Zara said with a smile. Your people show compassion for strangers. That is a rare quality in the galaxy. The Shadowborn prey on worlds that cannot defend themselves, but they also target species that show kindness because they see it as weakness. Over the next several hours, Zara shared more details about the Shadowborn invasion. She described their massive ships, their devastating weapons, and their ruthless tactics. But she also revealed crucial information about their vulnerabilities. Their shield technology has a frequency resonance that can be disrupted, she explained. If you can match the exact frequency, their shields become useless. Also, their ships require a specific type of fuel that is rare in this part of the galaxy. If you can locate their supply lines, you can limit their mobility. Jake realized that this information could save Earth, but it would require extensive preparation. How long do we have before they arrive? Perhaps 18 months, possibly less, Zara replied. The Shadowborn move quickly once they select a target. They will send scout ships first to gather intelligence, then follow with their main fleet. We need to get this information to Earth immediately, Jake said. Our government needs time to prepare defenses and warn other human colonies. Zara nodded in agreement. I will help you prepare your people for what is coming. But I must warn you, the Shadowborn have never been defeated in open battle. Your only hope is to make the cost of invasion too high for them to accept. Dr. Kane had been studying the medical data from Zara's treatment. There's something else we should consider. Zara's people are technologically advanced, and they have experience fighting the survivors of her species could be valuable allies. Do you know where the other survivors went? Jake asked. They scattered across the galaxy to avoid being tracked, Zara replied. Some went to the Outer Rim territories, others sought refuge in neutral systems. I have contact codes for several groups, but I do not know if they survived their journeys. Jake made a decision that would change the course of the mission. We're going to help you find your people. Earth needs allies who understand this enemy, and you need to reunite with the survivors of your species. Zara's eyes filled with tears, and she reached out to grab Jake's shirt again. You would do that for me. You would help me find my people. Of course, Jake said simply. It's the right thing to do. Besides, we're going to need all the help we can get when the Shadowborn arrive. As Jake looked into Zara's violet eyes, he realized that finding her had been the most important moment of his life. Not just because of the threat she had warned them about, but because of the connection he felt with her. She was intelligent, brave, and compassionate, despite everything she had lost. The galaxy was about to become a much more dangerous place, but Jake was no longer facing it alone. He had found an ally, a friend, and perhaps something more in the blue-skinned princess who had grabbed his shirt and asked him not to leave her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. 2 weeks had passed since Zara first warned them about the Shadowborn threat. The horizon's edge was now racing toward Earth, at maximum speed, carrying the most important intelligence humanity had ever received. Jake spent most of his time in the ship's conference room, working with Zara to analyze the data from her crystal sphere. The information was overwhelming. The Shadowborn had conquered dozens of star systems and enslaved or destroyed countless species. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. Worse yet, they seemed to enjoy the destruction they caused, treating entire civilizations like toys to be broken. "Show me their fleet composition again," Jake requested while studying the holographic display that Zara had created. Zara touched the crystal sphere, and the display changed to show massive, wedge-shaped ships, bristling with weapons. Each battle group consists of 1 command ship, 12 heavy cruisers, and 60 smaller vessels. They travel in groups of 3 battle groups for major invasions. Jake did the math quickly. Nearly 200 ships would be heading toward Earth, each one capable of destroying entire cities. "How did your people hold out against them for so long?" "We had planetary shields and a large fleet," Zara replied. "But our main advantage was that we knew they were coming. We had months to prepare, while you will have less than a year." Dr. Kane had been working with Earth's military scientists through long-range communications to develop countermeasures. The news was not encouraging. "Jake, I just received word from Earth Command. They're mobilizing every available ship, but our entire fleet is less than half the size of a single Shadowborn battle group." Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. As the person who had discovered the threat, he was being asked to help coordinate humanity's response. "What about the frequency weapon that can disrupt their shields?" "We're working on it," Dr. Kane replied. "But the engineering challenges are enormous. We need to build weapons that can generate precise frequency resonance on a massive scale. Even with Zara's help, it will take months to develop prototypes." Zara had been listening to their conversation with growing concern. "There is another option, but it is very dangerous. The crystal contains the location of a Shadowborn supply depot in the Vega system. If we could capture or destroy it, we might delay their advance." Jake looked at her with surprise. "You want to attack them directly? I thought you said they had never been defeated in battle." "They have never been defeated when they choose the time and place of battle," Zara corrected. "But if we could strike at their supply lines while they are not expecting it, we might succeed. The depot is lightly defended because they do not believe anyone would dare attack it." Ben Carter had been reviewing tactical data, and he shook his head. "Captain, it would be a suicide mission. Even if we could destroy the depot, we would never escape. The Shadowborn would hunt us down and kill us all." Zara stood up from her chair and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. "You are right, Lieutenant. It would almost certainly be a suicide mission. That is why I cannot ask you to do it." "But you're thinking about going yourself," Jake said. It was not a question. "I am the only one who knows the depot's exact location and security codes," Zara replied without turning around. "If I could get close enough, I might be able to overload their power systems. The explosion would destroy the depot and hopefully delay their advance long enough for your people to complete their preparations." Jake stood up and walked over to her. "Zara, look at me." When she turned around, he could see the determination in her violet eyes. "You're not going on a suicide mission. We'll find another way." "What other way?" Zara asked. "Every day we delay, the Shadowborn get closer to Earth. How many human lives are worth more than mine?" The question hit Jake like a physical blow. He had grown to care deeply about Zara over the past weeks. The thought of losing her was almost unbearable, but he also knew she was right. If destroying the depot could save Earth, then the mission had to be considered. There has to be another option, he said. What if we could find some of your people? Would they help us attack the depot? Zara shook her head sadly. The survivors are scattered and hiding. It would take months to locate them and gather enough ships for an assault. We do not have that much time. Dr. Kane had been working with her computer terminal, and she looked up with excitement. Wait, I might have found something. Zara, you said. The depot uses a specific type of fuel that is rare in this part of the galaxy. What if we could contaminate their fuel supply instead of destroying the depot? Contaminate it? How? Zara asked. The chemical composition of their fuel has a weakness, Dr. Kane explained. If we could introduce a catalyst that would cause it to become unstable, the entire depot would become useless. The contaminated fuel would spread through their supply network and cripple their fleet. Jake felt a spark of hope. Could we do that without a direct assault? Possibly, Dr. Kane replied. We would need to get close enough to inject the catalyst into their fuel storage tanks. It would still be dangerous, but not necessarily suicidal. Zara studied the data on Dr. Kane's screen. It could work, but someone would have to infiltrate the depot on foot. The fuel storage area is heavily shielded and can only be accessed from inside the facility. I'll do it, Jake said immediately. Jake, no, Zara protested. You do not understand what you are volunteering for. The depot is crawling with Shadowborn soldiers. If you are caught, they will torture you for information before they kill you. Then I won't get caught, Jake replied. Besides, I won't be going alone. You know the facility layout and security systems. I'll need you to guide me. Zara grabbed his shirt with both hands, just like she had done when he first found her. I will not let you risk your life for me again. You have already done enough. Jake covered her hands with his own. This isn't just about you anymore, Zara. It's about Earth and every human colony in the galaxy. If we don't stop the shadow, now they will keep spreading until they have destroyed everything. Then I will go with you, Zara said. If you are determined to attempt this mission, then you will need someone who knows Shadowborn technology. Ben Carter interrupted their conversation. Captain, with all due respect, this is insane. You're talking about infiltrating an alien military installation with just 2 people. Even if you succeed, the Shadowborn will know someone is working against them. Good, Jake replied. Maybe that will make them more cautious. Every day they spend worrying about sabotage is another day for Earth to prepare its defenses. Dr. Kane had been working on the catalyst formula, and she looked up with a mixture of excitement and concern. I think I can synthesize the compound we need, but it will have to be deployed carefully. Too much, and the explosion will destroy the depot immediately. Too little, and the contamination will be detected before it spreads. How long do we have before the Shadowborn fleet reaches Earth? Jake asked. Zara consulted her crystal sphere. Based on their usual travel patterns, I estimate 14 months. The supply depot mission would have to be completed within the next 6 months to have maximum effect. Jake made his decision. We're going to do it. Ben, contact Earth Command and tell them we're going to attempt to sabotage the Shadowborn supply depot. Dr. Kane, start working on the catalyst compound. Zara and I will begin planning the infiltration. Captain, I strongly recommend against this course of action, Ben said. The risks are too high, and the chances of success are too low. The risks of doing nothing are higher, Jake replied. If we can delay the Shadowborn advance by even a few months, it could make the difference between Earth's survival and destruction. Over the next few days, Jake and Zara worked together to plan every detail of the mission. They studied the depots, layout, memorized guard patrol patterns, and identified the best route to the fuel storage area. The more they learned, the more dangerous the mission appeared. The depot was located on an asteroid in the Vega system and was surrounded by automated defense platforms. Getting close enough to land without being detected would require a small stealth ship and perfect timing. Once inside the facility, they would have to avoid dozens of Shadowborn soldiers and security systems. "There is something else you should know," Zara said during one of their planning sessions. "The Shadowborn can sense fear and aggression in other species. If you are frightened or angry when we encounter them, they will know something is wrong." Jake nodded grimly. "Then I'll have to control my emotions." "How do you stay calm around beings that destroyed your homeworld?" "I think about the people I am trying to save," Zara replied. "When I focus on protecting others, instead of my own pain, I can remain calm. You must do the same." As the mission date approached, Jake found himself spending more time with Zara, outside of their planning sessions. She had become the most important person in his life, and the thought of losing her was almost unbearable. But he also knew that some things were worth dying for. The night before they were scheduled to depart for the Vega system, Zara came to Jake's quarters. She was wearing a simple dress made from fabric that seemed to shimmer with its own light. Her silver markings were glowing softly, and her violet eyes were filled with emotion. "Jake, I need to tell you something," she said. "If we do not survive this mission, I want you to know that meeting you has been the greatest gift of my life. You saved me when I had lost everything, and you gave me hope when I thought there was none left." Jake took her hands in his. "Zara, we're going to survive this. We're going to save Earth and find your people, and build a future together. I pray that you are right," she whispered. "But if we fail, at least we will face the end together." As Jake looked into her eyes, he realized that he had fallen in love with the blue-skinned princess who had grabbed his shirt and asked him not to leave her. Tomorrow, they would risk everything to save two worlds, but tonight, they had each other. The mission to the Shadowborn Depot would determine the fate of humanity, but Jake's greatest fear was not death. It was the possibility that he might have to watch Zara die for his people's sake. The stealth ship, Whisper, drifted silently through the asteroid fields surrounding the Shadowborn Depot. Jake gripped the controls tightly as he navigated between the floating rocks that provided cover from the enemy's sensors. Beside him, Zara monitored the security frequencies, looking for any sign that they had been detected. The depot was massive, even larger than Jake had expected. It looked like a dark metal spider, crouched on the surface of the largest asteroid. Weapon platforms surrounded it like a deadly web, while transport ships moved back and forth, carrying supplies to the Shadowborn fleet. "The next supply convoy departs in 30 minutes, Zara whispered. "That will give us the best window to approach without being seen." Jake nodded and activated the ship's cloaking device. The technology was experimental and would only work for a few hours before the power cells burned out. They would have to complete their mission and escape before the cloak failed. As they waited for the convoy to depart, Jake thought about the message they had sent to Earth before leaving. If they failed, someone needed to know what they had attempted. Dr. Kane and Ben Carter would continue working on Earth's defenses, but without the delay caused by destroying the depot, humanity would have little chance of survival. "Jake," Zara said softly, "I want you to know that whatever happens, I am proud to face this with you. You have shown me that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it." "We're going to make it," Jake replied. "We're going to contaminate their fuel supply and get out of here. Then we're going to find your people and build the alliance that will stop the Shadowborn forever." The convoy of transport ships began moving away from the depot, heading toward the jump point that would take them to the Shadowborn fleet. Jake waited until they were clear, then began the final approach. The depot's defense platforms swept the area with sensor beams, but the cloak held. They landed in a maintenance bay that Zara had identified as having minimal security. The bay was dark and filled with repair equipment for the smaller transport vessels. Jake and Zara checked their gear one final time, then activated the airlock. The depot's atmosphere was toxic to humans, so they wore full environmental suits. Jake carried the catalyst compound in a secured container, while Zara held a scanner that would guide them to the fuel storage area. Both of them were armed, but they hoped to avoid any confrontation. The corridors of the depot were dimly lit, and filled with the sound of machinery. Jake had never seen a Shadowborn in person, and he hoped to keep it that way. According to Zara, they were tall humanoids with black skin and red eyes that glowed in the dark. They moved carefully through the facility following the route they had memorized. The fuel storage area was located deep within the depot, protected by multiple security checkpoints. Zara's knowledge of Shadowborn technology allowed them to bypass most of the sensors, but they still had to avoid the patrol guards. 2 guards approaching from the left corridor. Zara whispered into her comm unit. "We need to find somewhere to hide." Jake spotted a maintenance alcove and pulled Zara inside just as 2 Shadowborn soldiers walked past. They were even more frightening in person than Jake had imagined. Their movements were fluid and predatory, and their red eyes seemed to see everything. The guards passed without noticing them, and Jake felt his heart rate slowly return to normal. They waited another minute, then continued toward their target. The fuel storage area was just ahead, but it was protected by a security door that required a code. "I know the base code," Zara said, while studying the lock mechanism, "but they change it regularly. I will need to access their security network to find the current sequence." She connected her scanner to the door's control system and began working. Jake watched both directions for any sign of approaching guards. The seconds felt like hours as Zara worked to break the security code. "Got it," she said finally. The door slid open with a quiet hiss, and they stepped inside. The fuel storage area was enormous. Hundreds of tanks filled with glowing blue liquid stretched out in all directions. The air hummed with energy, and Jake could feel the power contained in the massive facility. This was what fueled the Shadowborn war machine. "The main distribution hub is over there." Zara pointed to a raised platform in the center of the room. "If we can inject the catalyst there, it will spread through the entire network." They made their way carefully between the storage tanks. Jake's hands were shaking as he prepared the catalyst compound. Everything depended on getting the mixture right. Too much and the explosion would kill them instantly. Too little and the contamination would be detected before it could spread. They reached the distribution hub and Jake began connecting the injection system. The catalyst would be introduced into the fuel stream and carried throughout the depot and beyond to every ship that refueled here. Within weeks, the contaminated fuel would spread through the entire Shadowborn supply network. "How long will it take to work?" Jake asked as he made the final connections. "The contamination will begin immediately," Zara replied, "but it will take several days before the fuel becomes completely unstable. By then, it will be too late for them to stop it." Jake activated the injection system and watched as the catalyst began flowing into the fuel stream. The liquid changed color slightly, but not enough to be noticed by casual inspection. The sabotage was complete. "Now we need to get out of here," Jake said. "How long before someone discovers what we did?" "If we are lucky, they will not notice until the fuel begins exploding," Zara replied. "If we are unlucky, they will discover the contamination within hours." They began retracing their steps toward the maintenance bay, where their ship was hidden. The facility seemed more active now, with more guards patrolling the corridors. Jake wondered if they had triggered some kind of alert system. They were halfway to the exit when disaster struck. A group of Shadowborn soldiers rounded the corner ahead of them, blocking their path. The aliens' red eyes glowed brighter when they saw the 2 intruders in environmental suits. "Stop where you are," one of the guards commanded, in accented English. "Identify yourselves immediately." Jake's mind raced as he tried to think of a way out. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Fighting would only alert the entire facility to their presence. But they couldn't surrender either because the would torture them for information. Zara stepped forward and spoke in the Shadowborn language. Jake couldn't understand what she was saying, but her tone was calm and authoritative. The guards seemed confused by her presence and hesitated. "I told them we are inspectors from the Central Command," Zara whispered to Jake. "They are not sure whether to believe me." One of the guards spoke into his communicator, calling for verification. Jake knew they had only seconds before their cover was blown. He looked at Zara and saw the same realization in her eyes. "Run," she said. They turned and sprinted back the way they had come. Behind them, the guards shouted orders and began pursuit. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility, and Jake knew their mission had been discovered. "This way," Zara called out as she led him down a side corridor. "There is another route to the maintenance bay." They ran through a maze of corridors with the sound of pursuit growing closer. More guards appeared ahead of them, forcing them to change direction again. The depot was going into full alert mode, with soldiers converging on their position from all directions. "We're trapped," Jake said as they found themselves in a dead-end corridor. "There's no way out." Zara pulled out her weapon and checked the power cell. "Then we fight. At least we completed the mission. The fuel contamination will spread even if we do not escape." Jake drew his own weapon and prepared to make their last stand. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. In moments they would be surrounded and killed, but they had succeeded in their mission. The Shadowborn advance would be delayed, and Earth would have more time to prepare. "Jake," Zara said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I love you. I know we have only known each other for a short time, but you have become everything to me." "I love you too," Jake replied. "I'm sorry I couldn't get you out of here alive." "You gave me hope when I had none," Zara said. "That is worth more than life itself." The first Shadowborn soldiers appeared at the end of the corridor. They raised their weapons and prepared to fire. Jake and Zara stood together facing their enemies with courage born of love and desperate hope. Then something impossible happened. The lights in the corridor began flickering and an explosion echoed through the facility. The catalyst was working faster than expected, and the contaminated fuel was beginning to destabilize. "The fuel storage area is overloading," Zara said, with surprise. "The contamination is spreading faster than I calculated." Another explosion shook the depot and the Shadowborn guards looked around nervously. Their weapons were powered by the same fuel system that was beginning to fail. Jake realized they might have a chance after all. "Move," he shouted as he grabbed Zara's hand. "The explosions are creating a distraction." They ran past the confused guards, who were receiving conflicting orders over their communicators. The depot was in chaos as fuel systems failed throughout the facility. Some areas were losing power, while others were experiencing dangerous overloads. They reached the maintenance bay just as their ship's cloaking device failed. The whisper was visible, but the bay was empty because all the guards had been called to deal with the fuel crisis. Jake and Zara scrambled aboard and activated the launch sequence. The ship lifted off, just as the fuel storage area erupted in a massive explosion. The blast tore through the depot's superstructure and set off a chain reaction that would eventually destroy the entire facility. Jake piloted the ship away from the asteroid at maximum speed, while debris rained down around them. "We did it," Zara said in amazement. "We actually did it." Jake looked back at the burning depot and felt a mixture of relief and satisfaction. They had struck a blow against the Shadowborn that would delay their advance and give Earth precious time to prepare. But more importantly, they had survived to fight another day. "What now?" Jake asked. "Now we find my people," Zara replied. "The galaxy is full of species that have suffered under Shadowborn rule. It is time to unite them all in a great alliance. Together we can stop the Shadowborn forever." As the whisper jumped to hyperspace, Jake thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. It had started when a dying alien grabbed his shirt and asked him not to leave her. Now they were partners in the greatest struggle the galaxy had ever seen. The war against the Shadowborn was far from over, but humanity was no longer alone. They had found allies among the stars, and together they would face whatever darkness lay ahead. Jake looked at Zara and saw not just the woman he loved, but the symbol of hope for every free species in the galaxy. The real battle was just beginning.